Hey guys, wanted to do another tutorial video on another radio, this time the Harris Unity XG-100 portable. It's the multi-band portable. It's kind of got a lot going on with it, so I figured it'd be a good idea to put out a tutorial to kind of cover all of the features and functions that you can find in the Harris and help you navigate it a little bit more efficiently. All right, guys, we're going to start by talking about all of the external knobs and buttons that can be accessed when the radio is in a locked state. So that is everything on the top and on the side of the radio. First step is turning the radio on, right? So with the power knob at the top, volume knob, we're going to power the radio on. And the way I typically program these, if we're not in a tactical mode, it's going to ask you for a PIN number in order to unlock the radio and begin operation of the radio. If it's in tactical mode and you boot it up, it will never ask you for a password. You'll just be able to go straight to whatever channels you need to access and start operating the radio as normal. But in this non-tactical mode, which is more of a master mode where you can access more channels, more systems, it's going to ask you for a PIN number. So we're going to go ahead and unlock the radio using that PIN number. All right, so for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we would go ahead and hit enter and unlock the radio. Now there is a predetermined number of attempts that you get to enter the password, and then once you've gotten the password wrong more than the number of attempts that are allowed, the radio will actually delete everything that's in it. It'll delete all of the channels, systems, all of the personality of the radio. In addition to that, it'll actually delete all of the encryption keys as well. And that's a security measure, but that feature is programmable. So we could make it 3 attempts, we could make it 15 attempts, we could make it 1 attempt. As you just saw on this radio, only 1 attempt was available. And if I make a mistake, I'm going to have to reprogram the radio, but that's not a problem for me. It may be a problem for you. All right, so getting started with the XG-100 multi-band portable. We already covered the volume knob. Associated with the volume knob, we have an on-off switch in the same housing as the volume and power knob. That on-off switch will do 2 different functions. It will either toggle your scanning on or off if you're on the master programming, or if you're on the tactical programming, it will lock your keypad. Lock on, lock off. Right now we're not on the tactical system, so you don't see the keypad lock function working, but I do program this switch to do 2 different things depending on which personality or mission plan that you've selected. In this case, it's the master plan. Okay, moving on from there, we have a channel knob, 16 channel positions, just like normal, with an ABC switch. That ABC switch will move you from the first 16 channels to the next 16 channels to the next 16 channels, and so on and so forth. There are hundreds and hundreds of channels in the radio, so just because you can navigate to channel 48 doesn't necessarily mean that you can get to channel 205. So in order to do that, we need to do an additional step, and that is to hit the center button, the center white button on the directional pad, and then you'll see that there's a number 4 selection. It says select channel or group. I'll hit number 4, and we can change those zones to go from 1 to 16, 17 to 32, or 33 to 48. I'm going to have it go 17 to 32. And now you'll see that starting on the A position of the switch, we're actually on, it's a little confusing, but we're actually on the 48th channel. And then as you switch through, you'll see there's a whole bunch of additional channels in the radio that you were not able to access previously with just the ABC switch in the first 48 channels in the radio. Additionally, we can do that once more and go on to the next group of channels, which would be 33 through 48. And you can see that now we're on switch A, position 1 on the channel knob, and we have a whole nother set of channels to make it through. In order to change the function of the channel knob and the switch to be able to control blocks of 48 channels, we'll use the white button. We'll select the 4th menu option, which we can do by either rolling down and hitting the white button again, or by just hitting the number 4 as a shortcut, and it'll take us right there. Selecting which bank of channels we want to program the knob to do, and then the knob will be now programmed to do those channels. So that's how you navigate the channel knob. The volume knob, which again, like other radios, when it's set to its minimum setting, is muted, but all the way counterclockwise would turn the radio off. Moving to the emergency button on the radio. The emergency button on the radio will declare an emergency on whatever channel it's programmed to do so. When you are on the master programming, you'll notice that the emergency function does not work. And that's because the master programming is really meant more to monitor a larger group of channels or number of channels. You're not in the tactical programming just yet. We'll get to that in a minute. But for now, on the master plan, just know that the emergency button serves no function. Okay, moving on from there, we have the top left key on the side of the radio, the yellow key. And that's going to toggle your talk around function on and off. Talk around is indicated on the top of the icon display here with a circle around a T. That just tells you you're in talk around mode. And in other words, it means that you're transmitting on the frequency that you're receiving on. So if your radio was set to a repeater channel and your frequencies were you were receiving on 463 but transmitting on 453, as you hit talk around, you now change the aspects of your channel. And now you are receiving on 463 and transmitting on 463. So it did that for you. I'll toggle talk around off, and you can see now that the transmit frequency shifted 10 megahertz lower to the repeater's input frequency. So that's the function of the talk around button on the top left side of the radio. Obviously, we have the push to talk button, pretty self-explanatory, but there will be some tones associated with the push to talk that will indicate whether or not you are in talk around mode or not. So starting on a repeater channel, if you key up the radio, you'll hear a short beep indicating that you are transmitting on a different frequency than you're receiving, and you're trying to access a repeater. You're transmitting on the repeater's input frequency. As you toggle talk around on that same channel, you'll hear a double beep indicating that you are transmitting in simplex, meaning you are transmitting and receiving on the same frequency. You hear that double beep, it's different than the short tone. That tells you that you're transmitting in simplex on the same frequency you receive on, and you will not be able to access a repeater. If we are on a simplex channel that was pre-programmed to transmit and receive on the same frequency already without the talk around function on, you'll still hear the same double beep that lets you know that you are transmitting on the same frequency that you're receiving on, that you're transmitting in simplex. Double beep lets you know you're transmitting and receiving on the same frequency. You're transmitting in simplex. Moving on from there, we have two buttons that are beneath the push to talk, one with 2 dots and one with 1 dot. Moving on to the one with 2 dots, when we hold it down, you'll see that it breaks squelch, it defeats squelch, so that you can monitor the frequency you're on without anything preventing you from monitoring the channels such as channel guard or PL tones, CTCSS tones, or DCS or digital channel guard or digital PL tones, or even NACs or anything like that related to P25. So again, the one with 2 dots is a monitor button. Holding that down, will open the squelch so that you can hear anything, whether it's intended for you to receive or not. Moving down from there, we have the button with only one dot. That is going to be your nuisance delete button. So as we scan all the channels in our lineup, as we come across a channel that we do not want to listen to because it's a nuisance to us, we can temporarily delete it from the scan list for this one power cycle. After we power cycle the radio off, it'll be back on the scan list where it was before. So this is only a temporary solution. So as we're scanning now, we're scanning the local system on the bottom. You can see it says scan. There's a big S and it says local. While you're hearing that traffic, you'll want to hit the nuisance delete. As you hit the nuisance delete, now you're no longer going to hear any more traffic on that channel until you power cycle the radio off. In addition to all the functions on the side of the radio, we also have the display up top, which can momentarily time out in terms of display, or you can have it on permanently. These are all programmable via the display functions in the menu of the radio. But you'll see that it gives you some indications as to what you're listening to. You're on channel 10. You're on UHF2 secure on the local system with your volume set to a specific level. And it gives you some information there. And this, of course, can be inverted. So if you're wearing it on your belt, you can read the text in the proper orientation. All right, guys, now we're going to go into some of the menu functions and the various ways to access different features of the radio. We have some displays, some icons on the display to talk to you about. The first one is going to be your signal strength indication up top left. There's 4 bars. When you're receiving, you can see they turn green because the radio is close and has a strong signal. As it's further away, you'll have less and less bars. On the right side, you have a battery meter that works similarly, and some other icons that you can learn more about by going into the menu, into utilities, and to the icon glossary. And it will describe all the various lighted and unlighted icons that will indicate to you what's going on with your particular radio at that time. But to sum it up, we have a key up top that lets you know that the talk group or channel that you're on is encrypted. And then we have a channel name, a system name, and the talk group that is associated with that particular channel. So if we're initiating a group call, it's going to be mirrored the same name as the channel. The talk group will be the same name as the channel. If we were to do something like an individual call, I can go to menu, hit the number 5 and go to calls. And I'm going to go to individual call. And I want to make an individual call to unit 4, 3, 2, 1. So that would be echo 21. And it says echo 21 to push to call now. So now I'm going to make a private individual call. Testing. 1, 2. And you can see that echo 1 is an XG-25. 1, 2, 3. It received an individual call from Uniform 1, which is the Unity XG-100 portable. Now they're in a private call where only the 2 radios can hear what they say to each other. But if anyone else is talking on the channel, they will also be able to hear that somebody is calling for them, so they can end their private call by hitting that button there and return to a group call, which is UHF2 secure. So that is some of the information that's displayed on the screen of relevance. Obviously, you have some soft keys here that activate the functions on the bottom of the display. On the left side, we have menu, which we'll talk much more about in a minute. And we have the channel info button on the far right side. If you want to learn more about what consists of that particular channel and talk group, whether that's the frequency or the tone that's being used or the talk group ID, anything like that, you can hit the channel info button and it will take you to a screen that gives you all the information that you could want to know about the channel. We have the channel name, the channel number, the zone that it's in, which would also be known as the system that it's in, the receive and transmit frequencies, the power setting, the talk group, which is UHF-4 secure, the unit ID of the unit calling, and that would be this radio. And as we scroll down, the receive NAC, the transmit NAC or network access code, the squelch setting, and any receive channel guard or CTCSS tones that have been programmed, and also any FNE data that's been utilized. If you wanted to edit some aspect of this, for example, you wanted to change the frequency or change the tone, you can hit the Edit Channel button and enter the password, which I believe is 1. And there you have a screen to edit any aspect of the channel you wish, whether that's the name, the frequency, the transmit power settings, the talk group, the NACs, the squelch setting, and so on. So we'll just go ahead and try to change the frequency real quick for you, just to give you a kind of an idea as how that's done. So right now the transmit frequency is 453.3125. I click on that, enter a new transmit frequency of 153.3125. Enter. And now I've changed the transmit frequency, and I will go ahead and back out. You'll notice that on the screen displaying all the information about the channel, the transmit frequency's changed. And as I back out completely, you'll notice there's an asterisk next to the name channel A16. That's because I've altered the characteristics of the channel from the keypad, and it's letting me know that I've made that change. Now, as you reprogram this radio with different mission plans that are preloaded in the radio, and I'm going to show you how to do that, any changes that you make to any particular channel via the keypad will get erased, and you'll have to start all over again. So if there's a permanent change you want to make in the radio, it's best to do that from the computer through the programming. But if it's a momentary change, if you're traveling and you just want to program a channel that you're not going to use very often, that can be done from the keypad. Just understand that when you reprogram it with a different mission plan, such as a tactical mission plan, it's going to erase any keypad edits that you may have made. Okay, moving on from there. We have a DTMF keypad, numbers 1 through 9 and star 0 and pound, that are going to be useful for entering things like unit ID numbers and telephone numbers should we use telephone interconnect or auto patch on a repeater. But mostly we're going to use them for shortcuts in the menu. And so we'll access the menu now. There are 2 menus for the Unity XG-100. The first is the word menu and the soft key that accesses it. This is pretty self-explanatory, very good graphics and explanations as to what it is that you're editing when you go into this menu. The first is all the settings. You have your audio settings, display settings, GPS, Bluetooth, clock, battery, and so on. Number 2 is all your scan lists. So you can go in here and edit any scan list in the radio by clicking scan list. And now you'll see that local has very few items on the scan list on the first page, but on the second page, it has quite a few, and they're highlighted in white. So you can toggle items on or off the scan list by using the white center button of the directional pad to highlight them and turn them on, or to take the highlighting away, make it a darker color, and take them off the scan list. In order to give the channel priority, you'll hit the option button, and we can either add the channel to the scan list or set a priority level. In this case, we'll set priority 1. Let's try that again. We'll set priority 1. And now Indian River County Fire Department EMS dispatch is priority 1 on the scan list. So backing out from there, you can access and edit any of the scan lists in the radio. And you could even assign custom scan lists, but we don't need to go into that just yet. All right, moving on. Number 3 is security. I don't recommend accessing this screen for any reason. If you do, the only options really available to you are to view the key list. Tells you what keys are in the radio. In this case, there's an AES and a DES key loaded in the radio. And the only other option, besides viewing the keys, is to disable the encryption or to zeroize the radio, which means to erase all of the encryption from the radio, which if you do, you'll be forced to send the radio back to have it rekeyed. So I would stay away from there. Number 4, as we briefly alluded to earlier, we'll select your various zones. And as we select those zones, we can scroll up and down from a local zone or a bigger zone such as multi-band, which includes most of the state of Florida, or more specific areas like the West Coast, or potentially just the Florida SARnet, and so on. In addition, you'll see there's a lot of trunked radio systems programmed in the radio. These trunked radio systems have been programmed for receive only. The Unity XG-100 is nice because it can be told through the programming not to affiliate with a trunked radio system. So when you tell a radio like the Unity XG-100 not to affiliate, it will never transmit in any way. It will not attempt to notify the tower site that you're on a particular channel, or that you're powered on, or that you have a particular ID number. It will never transmit any trunked radio information. It'll be in receive only. So in that case, it's just like a scanner. All right, moving on from zone, we have the call icon, number 5. And from here, we can disable talk around mode, but of course we could do that from the side of the radio, or we could enable it. We can initiate an individual call like you saw a moment ago, or we can change the talk group. So changing the talk group, we have some talk groups to choose from. And we can change the talk group, for example, from an encrypted talk group like 2 secure to an unencrypted talk group like 6 omega, or the mutual aid talk group. Or we can change it to an all call to be able to access or have interoperability with anybody, no matter what talk group they're programmed to receive. In addition to being able to change the talk group, you're also able to change your channel guard settings. So you'll be able to select different tones without having to reprogram or edit the channel from the channel edit screen. You can change the receive channel guard or the transmit channel guard, or in other words, the transmitter receive tone. Various most popular tones are available there. If you need more tones, or if you need access to digital tones, things that are not available on this menu, then you use the channel edit function under radio info or channel info on the screen. Okay, and you can see that once we have changed the channel guard, it does indicate at the top of the screen that you've changed the channel guard setting. All right, moving on from there, we have the GPS menu option. In the master system, GPS is disabled, but in the tactical system, it is functional and does serve a purpose in terms of giving you a location in reference to your latitude, longitude, altitude, and the velocity and heading that you're traveling. In addition, it can also transmit your relative position to other units that are able to receive that type of data and populate that information on a radar type screen in order to accurately locate your position from the radio that it is receiving your GPS data. Moving on from there, we have the program function of the menu. This allows you to program different mission plans. Right now we're on a ProScan master mission plan, and we can reprogram the radio to do a tactical mission plan, which we'll do now. Once you have reprogrammed the radio with an alternate mission plan, you'll notice that when you access the tactical plan, the backlighting has changed. So we'll escape from that menu, and you'll see that the programming is really still the same in terms of the channels, but you've lost certain systems for monitoring. And the backlighting has been reduced to its minimal level to provide the least visual signature possible in a tactical environment. And the switch up top now, instead of scanning, will lock your keypad so that you can't inadvertently get off channel or access menu options that you shouldn't be accessing in a tactical environment. We're going to go back to the master for the rest of the demo so you can see it a little bit better. And when you go back to the master, it's going to ask you for the password in order to activate the system that you're trying to access. So you would enter that password. And after you enter the password, it will boot up the system. As we hit enter, it's going to reprogram the radio and delete all the other previous information about the tactical system, erasing the database. And now we are back to the master plan, and you can tell because the backlighting is nice and bright and you're able to see it. The number 8 in the menu is a menu about radio messaging, text messaging, statuses of the radio, stuff that I would largely leave unused. I don't use the functions in this menu ever. It's a little too difficult to send messages with these radios, and there's really nothing else to access in the menu. Now, something I do access quite frequently is the utility menu. Now, the utility menu has several things that you can do. The first is a self-test to make sure that everything about the radio is operational, and that works just fine. The next is information about your radio, the radio's firmware revision, hardware revisions, the ESN number, the serial number of the radio, the version of AES or DES encryption modules that are installed. So all the pertinent information that you would need for programming. As we go down from there, we have the battery information menu. And here we see what the battery voltage is, the capacity, the chemistry of the battery, the state that it's in, and the cycle count, how many times it's been cycled. After that, we touched earlier a little bit on the icon glossary. Again, that will give you an indication as to what all the different icons are on the screen and what they mean. TCXO tuning. This is not a menu option that you should use. It's not one you should be permitted to use. If you go into the TCXO tuning, you can absolutely mess up the performance of the radio. The radio is zeroed, for lack of a better word, to perform and be finely tuned on a particular frequency. When you adjust that tuning, you are now off frequency and your radio is not going to perform the way it should. So we'll skip past that. That's for radio techs. Feature info is going to tell you what the radio is capable of, what features are enabled on the radio. And specifically, you'd be interested in this if you were buying a radio or selling a radio. You need to know what you're buying and what you're selling so that you know what the radio is capable of doing. In this case, this radio is capable of over-the-air programming. It's capable of P25 conventional operation, over-the-air rekeying of encryption keys over the air. It's capable of AES and DES multi-key encryption. That's what the word encryption means. It's capable of trunking, and it's enabled to do VHF, the full VHF band, 136 to 174, the full UHF band, 378 to 520, and the 700 and 800 megahertz bands as well. The radio is also feature enabled to do DES CFB, which is a algorithm for DES encryption, vote scanning, phase 2, which is TDMA operation on phase 2 trunked radio systems, GPS, and Bluetooth. So these are the capabilities of the radio, what the radio is enabled in its feature encryption to be able to do. Those features cost money from Harris, so if they're not turned on, you'll have to pay for them to turn them on. Now, one of the most important things that I find in the radio is the RSSI meter. I'll scroll down to that as soon as I turn the radio on, and I want that enabled. So that way, as I back out of all these menus, you'll notice in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, there's a little number that tells me the signal strength that's coming in. And I don't have to just rely on the signal strength bars. I'm going to rely on the actual number measured in decibels. So as I hit scan, you'll notice at different times that this number is going to change, particularly when it receives a signal. And in this case, it's receiving a 100 signal or a 101. I would consider that to be a not great signal, but a usable signal. A great signal, let's just see what that looks like with the radio sitting right next to us. And you'll notice that right now it says 130. And as it receives a strong signal from a radio next door, 49 is the lowest number we're seeing. So the range on this thing would be about -49 to -130. -130 being no signal at all. -49 being a signal that's very strong and right next door. We have, after the RSSI, the ability to change the power-up password pin. It's going to ask you for the original pin and then a new one, and to confirm it, and then you can change that pin number as many times as you like. Now, much like the RSSI meter on the bottom right-hand corner of the display, you can also ask to toggle on another indication on the screen to let you know whether or not a person transmitting is transmitting in TDMA or FDMA. So I'll toggle that on. This is a phase 2 liquid crystal display. And you'll notice there's a few hash marks above the RSSI. As we're on P25 and I transmit with a phase 1 signal, it says FDMA. A little hard to read on the screen there, but FDMA, it's telling me it's phase 1. As I toggle to the next channel, we're in analog. Not sure if it'll do the same thing, but I think it should. Testing. 1, 2. Yeah, so it's still FDMA. So if this were monitoring a phase 2 system, it would come across as TDMA, letting you know that the talk group or channel that you're monitoring is in TDMA or phase 2. Okay, guys, so that is the entirety of the menu from the soft key. Now there is a shortcut menu, and the shortcut menu is accessed by hitting the center button on the directional pad. Accesses that shortcut menu, and we've moved past Nuisance Delete. Now we are on Channel Guard. Again, this is a little redundant, just like we accessed earlier. You can edit your tones, CTCSS tones, with a pre-programmed list of 16 common CTCSS tones from this selection. Moving on from there, we can go to channel entry. If you know the channel number that you would like to access, instead of programming the knob to go to the appropriate setting and then changing the switch to zone B or C, and then changing the knob to the appropriate position, if you've memorized the channel number, say it's 65, and you hit enter, we can automatically hop to channel 65, and there we are. We are going to go to the number 5 function, which would alter the characteristics of the channel that you're on and change the transmit power from low to high, or in this case, from high to low. Number 6 has to do with voice enunciation. The radio is not programmed right out of the gate to announce the name of the channel or any other functions that it's performing via voice, but it can be programmed to do so, in which case you can toggle that function on or off from the shortcut menu in the number 6. When you're on a P25 channel that's enabled for it, and there are other radios that are compatible with it, you can go to the option 7 on the shortcut menu and display your situational awareness. Now when you do that, you bring up a radar screen that can populate the ID numbers and location of individuals based on their GPS coordinates that will indicate the cardinal direction that they are from you and the distance measured in feet, out to as many as 20 miles, I think. It's a scale that can be scaled up or down down to a half mile, I believe, and all the way up to 20 miles. So that would be display situational awareness. 8 is caller ID. It'll show you the last units that have called. You can see that Echo 21 is the only other unit that has called this radio recently. So it's in the first position there. Moving on from the number 8 caller ID of the shortcut menu, you can start an iCall, which is the same as going into the other menu option and performing an individual call. You can toggle talk around on and off, but of course we can do that with the top side button. And you can start the monitoring of a channel, much like holding that button to break squelch and monitor. But when you do it this way, it permanently monitors it without you having to touch the radio. In order to turn that off, you'll have to go back to the menu and stop monitor. Once you've done that, you'll see the only thing left on the menu is to start scanning, which you can't do from this menu because that's what the switch will do for you. And then finally, you can lock the keypad. And when you lock the keypad, unlike the switch in the tactical programming, you will unlock it by going left, right, up, and down. And that will unlock the keypad from the directional pad of the radio, left, right, up, down. A little bit of a contra motion, but once you've accomplished that, you've unlocked the radio's keypad. I do believe that that concludes all the features and functions of the Unity XG-100 when you're in the master plan. So let's take a look a little bit at the tactical plan. In the tactical plan, we'll activate the plan. Doesn't require a password to activate it, and it also does not require a password to power the radio on once it's been pre-programmed with that tactical plan. You'll notice the backlighting is dim because it's on the tactical system, and now the GPS is actually active, so some of those menu options that we didn't show you should be accessible now. Going back to the menu, GPS, you can see that the GPS does not aware of its last known position because it has not connected with the satellites yet. But when it does, it will show your last known position. All these fields will populate, and you will be able to scroll to the next screen and see all of the various satellites that it's communicating with and all the various signal strengths that are associated with those satellites, which one is best, and so on. When it does connect to a satellite, the word Harris on the top of the screen will be replaced with the time, satellite synchronized time. If you continue through all the screens of the GPS, you'll see that situational awareness screen, which has your radar, and down to the smallest scale, it's 0.05 of a mile. But we can up that scale all the way up to 20 miles, like I said before. And now you'll notice that we acquired the time from the satellite. It is now 16:04, and so now we are connected to the satellites. Our latitude and longitude is published on the radio, and our altitude and velocity is as well as our heading. Okay, getting out of the GPS screen, we're just going to talk about some of the various differences between tactical and master. The tactical's programming mission plan has less zones. So all of the zones that were programmed for receive only for public safety are no longer there. You only have the zones that you're going to communicate on. And in addition to that, the functions, how you scan and how you lock the keypad have changed a bit. So now the switch that previously initiated scanning before locks your keypad, so there's no need to use the contra code to unlock it. And in order to scan, you can hit the center button. And the first option on the list is to start scanning, so we can select that. And you can see that it has started to scan. If we want to disable it, center key in the directional pad, and again, the first item on the menu, stop scanning, and you'll notice that we stop scanning. Aside from GPS being deactivated on the master system, the brightness being higher on the master system, and the function of the switch to lock the keypad versus the directional pad to unlock the keypad, and the function of the switch to scan in the master plan, or selecting scan from the directional keypad in the tactical system, those are the only differences. There's a reduction of systems and zones, as we mentioned, but all of the other functions of the radio, whether they are menu options or editing the channels or the shortcut menu, are all the same. No difference. The side buttons function the same way. There's just less to navigate on the tactical system. On the right side of the radio, we have the Universal Device Connector, or UDC. This is the port that we use to connect a radio programming cable to program the radio. It's also the port we use to upload encryption keys to the radio, but for your purposes, it's also an accessory audio port for things such as shoulder microphones, or earpieces, surveillance kits, tactical throat mics, push-to-talks, things of that nature. An example of one of the audio accessories that's available is this Endura push-to-talk, which is also a shoulder mic. Very unique product. I'm pretty happy with it. Basically, it functions as a standard shoulder microphone the majority of the time. It has the emergency button. It has a push-to-talk. It even has a port for an earpiece. And you can use this just as you would any other shoulder microphone. However, when you plug in a headset to its waterproofed port, the speaker in the microphone is muted, and it has a secondary push-to-talk button on the front, which is this big pad, and you can use that to go ahead and actuate your push-to-talk and communicate through whatever headborne system you're using, whether that's something like Safariland Liberator 4s or Peltors or Ops Core amps, anything like that, any kind of headset that you want to connect with a NATO connection. You can plug right into your shoulder mic and not have to move it anywhere off of your kit. It's where it would always be. You just plug your headset into it and you're up and running with your helmet set up. So in addition to those audio accessories, because the radio is enabled with Bluetooth, there are plenty of products on the market that will give you wireless solutions for those audio accessories, such as wireless Bluetooth shoulder microphones and other audio accessories like that. So that's your general overview of the Unity XG-100 multiband portable, and maybe a little bit about accessories. I hope this helped, guys. If you have any questions, give us a call.